Hi, this is Sudhin Bhartia, and welcome to another episode of TFR Newsroom. And today we have with us once again Sheng Liang, co-founder and CEO of Rancher Lab. Sheng, it's an exciting day that yesterday you announced that Rancher Labs is joining SUSE.
Yeah, it's really a great development for Rancher as a business. I kind of look at it as the next. This is the launch point for the next stage of hyper growth for Rancher, because as you know, both Rancher and SUSE are open source companies who ship open source software built on an enterprise subscription business model. So and beyond that, we have extremely high degree of alignment when it comes to company culture and open source. So I'm really excited. SUSE being the leader in enterprise Linux, and Rancher is the most widely used enterprise Kubernetes platform. So, we always said Kubernetes is the new Linux. So two companies coming together, that's really going to propel our growth to the next level.
Since you mentioned Linux, and when we look at today's stack, nobody uses just Linux. They use Linux underneath, and they run a lot of things. So what are the core components? Even Kubernetes itself is not enough. That's why you also launched Longhorn a few weeks ago. So there's so many core components. So if you look at today's stack, what are the core components that are needed for any vendors to be successful in this space? Because we also look at hyperscale cloud providers like AWS or GCP and Azure there.
No, you're absolutely right. Like these days, what it actually takes for a organization to be successful with a cloud native technology is extremely complex. And there are really two ways to approach it. One way is there's a way that says, you don't worry about it. We'll take care of all of your needs from application management to DevOps deployment to monitoring to CI/CD, to Kubernetes, container orchestration, to Linux operating system, all the way down to the infrastructure. So we don't subscribe to that approach. Neither Rancher nor SUSE subscribe to that approach. We believe our customers are better served by really focusing on what we do extremely well. And we gotta make sure that we fundamentally understand the needs of our customers, the gaps in the whole solution stack, and actually the value we can provide. SUSE become extremely successful being a leader in enterprise Linux. And if, I've talked to you in the past, the way we look at Kubernetes is it's not just the Kubernetes layer itself. The true power of Kubernetes becomes obvious when an organization start to view it as a standard protocol for compute. So wherever they deploy their app, whether it's in public cloud or private cloud or vSphere clusters or bare metal servers or edge nodes, edge gateways, IoT gateways, with Kubernetes, you can have the same uniform computing platform, and Rancher then could be the platform that manages them all. So in that kind of world, it is very important for a Rancher to be able to work with all ecosystem providers, to be completely agnostic to heterogeneous infrastructure. And likewise, SUSE as a company, I was very impressed when I heard this slogan from them called the power of many. They provide not open source solution for customers, but they provide an extremely open solution for customers. And I think that's exactly what our customers demand these days.
As these two companies are coming together, there are two aspects I see there: people, project, and commute. Actually, three things. So I do know that you will be taking the role of President of Innovation and Engineering at SUSE, if I'm not wrong. And the existing president will move to the role of CTO.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this role. I just think I think SUSE is a great business. They have a very, very strong engineering team dedicated to developing capabilities that are valuable for enterprise customers, but also be a leader in the open source community. So that stuff really speaks near and dear to me. And Thomas, in the last couple of years, have really drove the pace of innovation and the efficiency to the next level. So I think SUSE engineering team is very strong. But what's exciting to me is by going in and actually managing both Rancher engineering team and arguably much bigger SUSE engineering team, I'll really be able to find new opportunities to drive innovation even faster and drive leverage across both organizations. That was the intention. Because the deal hasn't been closed, we're going through regulatory approvals. I actually have not been exposed to the actual inner workings or the resource allocation of SUSE engineering team as a whole. But I'm really excited about this opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for me. I'm excited about it. I think the upside is tremendous, and I think with all the help coming from Thomas and Melissa and the rest of the SUSE team, I hope I'm going to be successful.
Now let's talk about, when you're talking engineering, let's talk about the tech pieces. There are a lot of technologies that you guys have developed at Rancher may seem to overlap, like K3S is there, and then K3OS is there, which is lightweight Linux, which is based on Ubuntu. So I know you may not be able to tell a lot about that, but for the sake of community, people who have invested in those technologies, what would the future look like of, I'm not talking the product, but I'm talking the open source technologies that you two have developed, but they also overlap at point.
Our approach to open source at Rancher has always been let 1,000 flowers bloom. It's very difficult to know upfront which technology was going to be successful, which technology was not. Like K3S, by all definitions, been a tremendously successful project. But we didn't start by developing K3S. We actually started, I think K3S born out of a different project called Rio, which is still under active development. So that's just the nature of open source. Is it grows organically, whatever it's developed. Generally based on particular insight of developers who actually, and the passion of developers who actually work on it. And it generally actually have very little to do with how many people actually work on it. So our attitude at Rancher has always been, don't worry too much about overlap. At the end of the day, the technology that actually gains adoption, actually solves problems, actually appeals to people, will naturally be the technology of choice, right? Like, Rancher developed, for example, in the early days. I mean, we're really we know this overlapping technology thing pretty well. Like, early days, Rancher developed Cattle, which clearly overlapped with Kubernetes, and then we had to retire Cattle. And then later on, with Rancher 1.0, we also actually had a Kubernetes distro, and that distro was then retired in order to get to RKE, which is really our Rancher 2.0 Kubernetes distro. But now we have K3S. And we've been positioning RKE as a data center Kubernetes distro, and K3S as the edge Kubernetes distro. As it turned out, the fundamental technology that you use to power Kubernetes distro is actually very similar. So I think what's going to happen, I know there's a project, it's all public knowledge that we're working on, is actually we're changing the guts of RKE to make it K3S based, even though RKE as a brand will continue to exist, right? So that's what I'm saying, like we're very, very used to technology evolution, take the best of things we've developed. At the end of the day, the technology that actually solves customers' problems, that actually embodies the insight we've gained over the years, is actually drives adoption. I think is the technology that's going to win.
Now, since we are talking customers, what I like about SUSE a lot is that instead of building their own stack and locking everybody into that, they like to work with partners. I don't want to name any companies. So they used to call them an open source company. How will Rancher fit into that? That kind of model, where it's open to anybody can, even the competitors, they work together. They leverage those technologies. At the same time, Rancher already has their own customers. So it's a twofold question. The fold is that, first of all, how the agreement that you have with your customer right now, what would it look like post when the acquisition is finalized? Number one. Number two is the whole strategy of being able to use SUSE technologies at the same time being able to use other competing technologies as well, which could be the Red Hat from any other. I don't want to name any specific company. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. From a customer's point of view, nothing is going to change. All they're going to see is much better. We'll have a much larger go-to-market organization, much more mature kind of support organization and processes that would better help them run mission-critical workload on Kubernetes. From a product perspective, we certainly gonna preserve the openness of SUSE and of Rancher. At Rancher, we've always been agnostic about the underlying operating system, the underlying hypervisor. I mean, we support many of our enterprise customers run on RHEL. Many of the on-premise deployments run on vSphere, right? And certainly will continue to be able to support that. I mean, I was early on, you mentioned this term called open source company. I think that's a very, very insightful statement. It's like the power of many. It's you could actually build a closed open source company if you really want, because even though the code is open source, you could constrain it with a business model so that customers really would have no choice but to take a very much of a locked-in approach. So neither us nor SUSE subscribes to that model. We all believe in the power of many. We all believe in 100% open source. So it's going to come together very well. I mean, you can rest assured that Rancher will continue to support Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Ubuntu Linux, Amazon Linux, all these other Linuxes.
If we look at SUSE, they're also very strong in HPC space. Edge is also a space where mission critical applications mostly they run on SUSE. How well suited is Rancher for that kind of use case? Also for Edge. And how will SUSE actually complement? Okay, you are one of the powerhouses when it comes to Kubernetes, but when we look at SUSE's whole market share, how will they be able to leverage, or what do you bring to SUSE from that perspective?
Yeah, I think you brought up a couple of very important verticals that SUSE is very strong: HPC and Edge and embedded. I just recently saw some announcement out of SUSE that they made their Linux free for ventilator makers or other medical devices to help fight COVID. Kind of gives you an idea how good a position they have in those verticals. So HPC it actually has turned out to be a very good match for Kubernetes. Kubernetes wasn't really designed for HPC. It's by no means an HPC scheduler, but as more and more workloads become containerized, right? The AI workloads, ML workloads, even some of the traditional scientific computing workloads, now they all run as containers. So I look at even the current Rancher customer base today, like we have, national labs and research institutes that basically using Rancher and Kubernetes as their HPC platform. So I really think there's going to be a lot of synergy between, Rancher's focus on Kubernetes and then SUSE's strength in HPC. Now with the with embedded and edge, I mean, it's actually the most exciting development at Rancher today. We with the popularity of K3s, we're really starting to invest in our fleet management solution, our K3s based Edge Linux distro. So that went GA last November, and we just keep enhancing it. So this stuff is literally a rocket ship from our perspective. It's still small today from an absolute, or even relative revenue perspective, but the growth is absolutely astounding. So I think there you would see, historically, Rancher weren't really able to provide a more of a full stack solution for our customers. I mean, if there's one place people actually want to look for more of a full stack solution, it's actually in edge and IoT, and that I really look forward to opportunities to start to leverage some of SUSE's strength around the operating system to build a great integrated edge solution for the future.
Awesome. Sheng, thank you so much for taking your time out. I know you're super busy there, but I'm really excited to see you again, maybe part of the SUSE. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Wagner.